Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of ThreatWise TV. I'm your host, Jason Wright, and today I brought in my good friend, Remy Philippe, who's going to talk to us a little bit about tetration and specifically the containerization and some of the functionality that we have there. Remy, how you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jason. What about you?
Hanging out here in Austin, Texas, staying safe. Hope all our viewers are too. Hope you are as well. So when it comes to tetration and workload security and application security, we've been doing a lot of product development and capabilities and even getting multiple products to work together in different places. But specifically with container support, this is not something that's new to us. We've had this out for a while. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right, Jason. There's lots of things that we tend to just take as granted, like, for example, hey, yeah, we have container support, so we don't actually push it too much. But it's actually been 2 years we've been running with container support as part of Tetration there, which allows you to go do some pretty cool things when it comes to policy. Would you like to have a look at it?
Well, you know I love the demos, man. So let's get under the hat and let's not keep people waiting. I know I love to show people as we talk. So let's jump in and talk about what we've got going on and show us the Tetration dashboard.
Sounds good. Let's go. There you go. Hopefully you should see my screen at this
Beautiful.
point.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's it. You're just logged in Tetration, and that's what, if you had a cluster running, that's what you'd see in the environment, and that would be actually the only thing that you would see on the platform when you log in. Nice course, nice way of breaking down everything inside the platform. And if you are doing enforcement today with like virtual machines or bare metals or even cloud for that sake, that's exactly what you would see when you log in. Now, guess what? If you were to enable containers, you would still see the exact same thing, because for us, a container is just a workload on which we put enforcement. That's
Right.
about it. So it's pretty cool because, I mean, if you don't know about your container environment, it doesn't really matter because you still get this dashboard view of everything in the environment. And if you know your container environment, we'll give you more details on that.
I could see it being something that could spiral out of control, like a firewall rule set. You know, I just got to have no idea. There's 10,000 lines out there. You know, where are my containers? When are they popping up and disappearing? Right?
Exactly. Like, dynamicity is a key problem when you look at containers. Just imagine that you're the ops guy, and I'm going to ask you to change your firewall rules about like 600 times a day. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that'd be tough.
So, you see, that's kind of the problem. And there's actually a second kind of problem in there is that, well, I might like CLI and the UI, but I mean, you might like code for whatever it means. I mean, I don't know. That might be your preference. So if you're a container developer and your metrics is about your productivity, your code quality, the security of your code, I'm pretty sure you're not going to ask and be happy if I tell you, hey, here's this brand new UI, fantastic UI. Can you just go and log in and learn about it so you can set your policy?
Yeah, exactly.
So what we did is that we actually gave the developer an option to be able to write their policy as code inside the environment. So we're actually telling them, Mr. Developer, I mean, you know your application better than anyone because you're actually writing it. So you know the dependencies, you know how things are talking in there. And you most likely know things about network policies, the Kubernetes network policy, which is a generic construct. We didn't reinvent a policy. It's the network policy we're reusing here. So if I can give you a way to say, hey, you like your VS Code platform and you have all your environment inside VS Code, great. Well, you know what? Just git commit and git push your policy. And this policy designed based on constructs which are proper to Kubernetes in your container environment will actually get enforced. How does that feel if I tell you that?
So it looks like you've got the ability to stay in a more native a platform or view that the developer might be more comfortable and experienced with. But you're saying that we're able to transpose and translate that into the policies and into the containers itself in Tetration?
That's exactly right. So if you don't like this environment, which may be the case, and you don't want to log in to that environment, here's your policies.
Gotcha. So these were pushed out of that code into a more graphic UI representation here in Tetration.
Exactly. So let's take one for an example, an address that's boring. Let's take this one. This one here, for example, you can see it's based on a username for the policy to actually get enforced in the environment. Well, if I scroll down here to my policy, this is actually my attributes. So we have the exact same policy, whether you're running into your code or in your UI. So whether you're a developer or you're a security or network operations. Now this policy there, it's pretty nice, but you need to render it somewhere. Otherwise, it's nothing more than just like an Excel spreadsheet at this point. So we actually can render that in multiple places across the environment. The first place you're going to render that is on the container workloads. So on the actual node which is running the containers. Why? Because, I mean, remember the scale problem and the rate of change. If I can go and enforce as close as possible to the container, well, my rate of change is going to be much more contained in the environment. So we are going to take all these policies and we're going to ask Tetration to actually go and render them directly inside a container. So for example, here, I could pick one of my policies. Let's take here something that has traffic here. I have some WordPress pods which are accessing a cluster which is running in the San Jose data center. And this policy is actually rendered directly on the container host itself.
Excellent.
So pretty easy to troubleshoot as well. Notice I didn't use a CLI. I didn't log into anything there. Same UI. So now we've got that, so that's pretty cool. So now I have basically a container which is talking to a physical environment, and my policies are getting enforced in there. But there's kind of some challenges in there. So we try to want to reach defense in depth in the environment. You want multiple layers of protection because you never know what can happen. And attackers are becoming really sophisticated nowadays. Mm-hmm. So why not actually use things like your F5 device? You probably have an F5 somewhere in your environment. This F5 might even be acting as an ingress controller in your environment. So an ingress controller allows you to actually allow inbound traffic in the container environment. So what if I was to take my policies here and go and get them enforced directly on the point which is the closest to the user, which is the ADC device? And I can do that very easily because my policy is rendered in Tetration. Remember, I put an intent in Tetration what I want to achieve. What I want to achieve is allow this IP address of this host, which is 71, to access the container host, and I want to allow Tony to access the container system. That's my goal. And then Tetration takes that and it says, look, I can enforce that in your container environment. Here's the policy I'm putting in my container environment, and that's the screen we have in the back here. And then it says, but you know what, actually, maybe I can enforce it somewhere else as well to render your environment more secure. And like, hey, you have an F5 device. And we can control F5 or Citrix from a policy standpoint and go and actually push this policy directly on the F5 device. So you're really close to the user.
So I'm seeing we started off in kind of a dev code environment. Then that policy got pushed up to Tetration to be enforced at the container level. And then Tetration pushed it over into F5 at kind of a little bit of abstraction higher, the infrastructure level. So it looks like here we're trying to enforce the policy in two places and first translate the policy and then enforce it in two places and kind of bridge between kind of the two islands of containers and the infrastructure. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So now you have a policy that actually expands through your campus, to your physical data center, through your container environment, and you get a single policy.
Excellent. All right, very cool, very cool.
So at this point, once we have this policy enforced, you can see here that I have my host which can access, and I have a host, obviously, you got to love the timeouts right on the login screens. Yes, this is security talk, but when it comes to us, we don't apply security to ourselves, right? And I can see my connection is actually working on the system. I can see my access being allowed here.
Okay. So it seems like there might be a little bit of, how would I say, an opportunity to regulate what the developers are doing. I could just see like, oh yeah, sure, developer has carte blanche access to start controlling security policies and ingress and egress traffic. That might get us in a little bit of trouble. Show us, if you can, a little bit about how we might be able to govern and prevent that over ambitious policy from wreaking havoc on the network and opening us up to vulnerabilities.
Yeah, it's a classical thing. Like, who do you trust, right? You trust the developer, or you trust the security team? And at the end, the guy who has his neck on the line is actually the security team. So they want to enforce some form of guardrails. And actually, while you were talking, the guardrails got enforced in there. You can see that before we had dev and prod with access allowed. Now we only have access to dev. That's interesting, right? And this thing, why did it change? Well, it's actually changed because I don't trust the developer. I mean, I was a developer myself, so I knew exactly what I would do to go around those problems. So as the team who actually runs the cluster here, the VSX tree group, I may want to set some different rules. And the way the iteration sees policy, it's a tree inside the policy. So you got the root, which is demo, and then the building here, my kube cluster, and the application. So what I'm going to do is to go at my kube cluster level, and I'm going to set a policy. And I'm going to set a policy that says dev cannot talk to prod in the environment. And I'm going to limit this connection here to make sure that my stations that can actually access this environment are restricted. And that's exactly what you see here. So now, if I'm a developer and I go against this rule, well, my build will fail because I'm going to notify the developer in the build stage way early in the process that you're doing something that may not work in production. You're going against the rules in there. And I'm going to give the developer the opportunity to go and change this policy while blocking him, of course, because we want to make sure that happens there. And as I inform him, the usual behavior of the developer is, okay, if there is a way to not talk to anyone, there is one, okay, I'm going to go this route. It just goes faster. And so they tend to follow the rules much better in this environment. So that allows to set those protections in those environments.
I love the term guardrails. I'm kind of thinking of the children's bumpers that we put up on the bowling alley to keep the ball from going into the gutter. Like, before you ruin anything, we're going to put this as All right. Well, this is excellent, man. This looks very well refined. This looks fantastic. I love that I've seen a couple of things. Number one, a maturity of product development. This is not something that's new to us. Support inside the ecosystem. So you're working with F5 and other infrastructure components out there. And then finally, the integration with your DevOps teams to where they can, write straight into and have policy enforced with their applications and containers translated right in there into iteration provides a little bit more harmony between the groups for sure. So this has been fantastic. Remy, thanks so much for showing this all to us. And for sure, if users want to have a little bit more information or get a little bit deeper in this, you can always go and visit us at cisco.com/go/tetration. And we've got a lot of other videos on application security, workload security, and tetration specifically. If you want to check those out, head over to the homepage of ThreatWise, which is cisco.com/go/ThreatWise, and tune in for the next episode. But for now, I've been Jason Wright talking to you. Thanks so much for tuning in and stay safe out there.